I cannot believe this movie is making me say this, but my reaction to this moment is like, not all men? Hi, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about the movie Promising Young Woman, which just came out very recently. A couple things right off the bat. This movie is pretty much entirely about rape and sexual assault, so if you do not want to hear about that right now, you can click off this video. And also, I'm going to spoil the entire thing, so if you don't want spoilers, you can watch the movie first. It just came out streaming yesterday, and I do highly recommend it, in spite of the fact that I have some critiques. It's been kind of a rough couple of months for movies. I mean, The Happiest Season came out and we all thought we were going to get an adorable lesbian Christmas movie, and that was a huge disappointment. And then I saw this trailer for what looked like a really cool, empowering sexual assault revenge thriller, and I was mostly disappointed. I do think this is a really excellent movie. It was just not the movie that I wanted it to be. So right off the bat, let's just talk about some simple good things and some simple bad things. The aesthetic of this movie is amazing. It has a palette. It's very pastel. Lots of pink, lots of teal, lots of floral, great clothes, great makeup design, great interior design. I mean, look at this adorable coffee shop where the main character works. The shot looks like a painting, and then Bo Burnham shows up and his shirt even matches the art on the wall. Even the cup is the same color blue. Along with the visual aesthetic, the soundtrack is perfect. I mean, the moment where I knew I had to see this movie was in the trailer where the acoustic string version of Toxic is playing and the main character is wearing this pastel rainbow wig. How could I not watch a movie with that sequence? I'll get into talking about more of the stuff that I didn't like when I start talking about the plot, but right off the bat I have to say that we have a racist trope. Laverne Cox plays the main character's boss and friend, and unfortunately, as is so often seen from a black woman supporting actress, we don't really know anything about her. She's just there to support the main character, and I don't even remember her name. I should add that this wouldn't be a problem in isolation. The problem is that this happens over and over again. So in the context of this movie, we don't need to know anything about the boss's character. This movie is already 2 hours long. But the black girl best friend is a trope, and for a lot of black women, those are the only roles they ever get to play, okay? Speech over. I do really love the dynamic between those two characters. Cassie's really bad at her job, the main character, and her boss just really doesn't care. She's mean to the customers. It's fun to watch. And in order to talk about more good and bad stuff, I have to just start explaining the plot. So the movie opens with the main character, Cassie, played by Carey Mulligan. She's at a bar and she's drunk, like falling down drunk, and this guy offers to take her home and he is about to assault her, and then she sits up in the bed stone cold sober. We cut away from that and she's walking the next morning and she's eating a jelly donut, and there's like, it's very suggestive of blood, and we, I think, are made to at least suspect that it's possible that she killed him. Then we get another scene where Cassie traps one of these rapists and we find out what exactly she does with them, and she doesn't kill him. She basically just scares him and then argues with him and tries to make him understand that he's a bad person. At this point I was really relieved. I did not want this to be a serial killer movie because I wanted to like the main character, and I would not have liked her if she was a serial killer. Then she's back at the coffee shop, she's working, this guy walks in, Bo Burnham. His character's name is Ryan. They knew each other from med school. He asks her out. They have a kind of meet cute, even though they already knew each other, wherein she spits in his coffee and he drinks it. And I have to say, it's gross, but I liked it. I thought it was a really original spin on that kind of scene. So Cassie does start dating Ryan, and those scenes are super, super cute. I mean, this could have been a really adorable rom-com, at least partly, but more on that later. Eventually we figured out that it's not Cassie who was raped in college, it was her friend Nina, and so she's getting revenge on her friend's behalf. And it's not stated right away that Nina is dead, but it's pretty easy to guess. She's basically being spoken about in the past tense and things like that. And then we find out that Cassie also had this friend, Madison, who she had a falling out with because Madison didn't believe and essentially blamed Nina for what happened to her. So Cassie meets up with Madison for a lunch date. She makes sure that Madison gets really drunk while she stays sober, and she offers Madison an opportunity to tell her that she's changed, that she views the situation differently, and she makes it clear that she doesn't. And then Cassie goes to this man who's waiting in the wings, and she pays him to set Madison up into a scenario where she thinks that she was raped. So this is the point in the movie where it's starting to take a turn where I'm not sure I'm happy with the direction in which this is headed. Because like I said, I want to like Cassie. Now, trapping rapists and arguing with them and trying to make them feel bad, that's one thing. I'm fine with that. I mean, it's a danger to her. She's traumatizing and re-traumatizing herself, and I think that she should stop. But this is definitely an escalation. I'm not sure that we can justify what she's doing to Madison. I suppose that's the point and the complexity of a revenge story. Is revenge justifiable? Under what circumstances? That's sort of the central question here. Side note, I don't know where Cassie found this guy who was willing to pretend to rape a woman for money, and then later in the movie, she hires what appears to be an actual hitman. Are these people coming into her coffee shop? I mean, personally, I would have a lot of trouble finding people like that, but she doesn't. Next on her revenge tour, Cassie goes to the dean who her friend Nina had spoken to and reported this incident to, who dismissed her and didn't believe her at the time. I was really intrigued by this part in the trailer. This really made me want to see this movie because this is a real, obviously serious issue of college campuses and administrators not handling this sort of thing well at all. Long story short, Cassie puts the dean in a situation where she thinks that her daughter is being assaulted or about to be assaulted. So at this point, it really feels to me like Cassie's behavior is escalating, and I just want to shout at her, like, just go home, go date Ryan, and be happy. That's what your parents want, it's what you deserve, it's what I want for you. It's really unclear how far she's going to take this and for how long we can be on her side ethically. But that does keep you really engaged as an audience. She does succeed in getting the dean to tell her that she was right, and it made me wonder if that's what she wanted. What is she trying to get out of this? Does she just want to be told that she's right? It's important to note that Cassie herself is assaulted in this movie. We only see 2 instances of this thing that she does dozens and dozens of times where she takes a rapist home. Even in just these 2 instances, she lets them kiss her. In one instance, things go further than that. She is being assaulted. So she is traumatizing herself for the sake of, I don't know, winning arguments? Ideally, I think she's trying to make these men really seriously think about their own behavior, but we have no evidence that it's working. Later on in the movie, this guy at a bar says to her, "Hey, you're that crazy person that my friend took home." It's clear that these men probably aren't really learning anything from this experience. I also thought it was really interesting that Cassie makes it clear at one point that she blames herself, at least partially, for what happened to Nina because she wasn't with her when it happened. Maybe they were together and she let her go onto this party, I'm not really sure. But I thought that was really interesting because this movie is all about critiquing victim blaming, but then Cassie is sort of engaging in victim blaming against herself. But I do think that that is realistic. I think you can hold an intellectual belief but feel something different emotionally. So let's talk about the romance with Ryan, because this felt like, to me, the opportunity for her to stop traumatizing herself over and over and to just heal and move on. Now, of course, you have to ask yourself from the beginning, is this a good guy? You're very primed to ask yourself that question in the context of this movie. He asks her out twice. The first time she gives him a fake number and he comes back and asks her out a second time, and that scene felt really on the line to me between creepy and too persistent and cute.
If you don't like it, we can have a safe word, and you can leave, no questions asked.
He definitely shouldn't have asked her out a second time. If someone doesn't want to go out with you, you should let it go. But at the same time, like, they have this flirtatious vibe, and she does seem like she likes him. Then he makes that safe word comment. I think we are really supposed to be trying to ask ourselves whether or not this is a safe, good guy, and in this scene, it felt very much like a toss-up to me. But then at the end of their first date, he asks her up to his apartment and she's hesitant and he backtracks really quickly. He's very nice about it. Later on, she says she wants to take things slow and he makes this cute comment about how they can just not move at all. And I was pretty much sold that this is a good guy, this is a safe guy. It's adorable. The montage scenes are perfect. There is nothing cuter to me in the world than a man singing along to girly pop music. That scene was made for me. The dialogue is really great. Bo Burnham has some really funny lines and he does a great job of delivering them, not surprisingly because he's a stand-up comedian.
Oh my thing of it. I'm gonna buy you a bicycle.
And they feel like jokes that a person would actually make, like they're pretty subtle. That line in the pharmacy where he says, "I haven't done this in a pharmacy in weeks." I could really see a person making that joke. It's subtle, it's believable, they had me. Things are going really well with him, he meets her parents and they like him. But then the inevitable and very predictable thing happens. I don't know why she didn't see this coming. She has not stopped trapping these men. So some weekend night she goes off to a bar and they run into each other while she is in the arms of another guy. But they do pretty quickly patch that up and it seems like they're genuinely in love. Then Madison comes to her house and she gives her a tape of what happened to Nina. And this is where I knew that I was not going to like how this movie ends. Nothing is going to go well from here. You know that she is not just going to drive straight to the cops and give them the tape. As soon as the tape exists, you know that she is going to watch it. She's not going to be able to not watch it. And so, as someone who is invested in the hope, the probably naive hope, that this character is going to heal and move forward, this is where I lose all hope in the movie going in that direction. But I did not anticipate just how bad it was going to be because she watches the tape and Ryan was there. I don't know how I didn't see this coming because I feel like I should have, but I didn't. I didn't at all, and it was devastating. I felt fully devastated. I mean, you have to hand it to the writer, the directors, the actors. This moment, it was effective. It was not what I wanted to happen, but it was very effective in making me feel horrible. I also kind of don't know how Cassie didn't see this coming, or at the very least, like there's a moment where Ryan mentions Al, the rapist, and he makes it clear that he's still friends with him, he's still in contact with him, and you know, at the very least, there's going to be a moment where Ryan has to choose sides. He cannot continue being friends with him while dating Cassie, but I genuinely believed, based on the characterization up to this point, that he would choose her. And then as it turns out, his actions are way worse than that and are just irredeemable. We cannot move forward from this point. So of course she confronts him and their dynamic just flips on its head immediately. She turns into her sadistic, smirking version of herself and he is just cruel and vindictive and awful. And I cannot believe this movie is making me say this, but my reaction to this moment is like, not all men? Not all men are terrible, and I'm not saying this for the sake of men. I'm not saying this for the sake of men who watch this movie and feel like, hey, I'm a good guy. If you're a good guy, this movie isn't about you. You don't have to defend yourself. If you do feel the need to defend yourself, I find that suspicious. But there are good men in the world, and I say this not for the sake of men feeling, bruised egos, but for her sake. For Cassie's sake. She's been through so much. Can we not just let her have a win? This is a revenge fantasy. Anything we want can happen. I can't think of anything that would be more healing and therapeutic for her than to have a positive and safe experience with a man. And so that's what I wanted. As an aside, I do hope that Bo Burnham gets to be the leading man in a cute rom-com because I just think he did an excellent job at that. But it gets so much worse. She gives Ryan a choice. She says, I won't probably send this video to everyone in your life if you just tell me where Al's bachelor party is going to be because Al's getting married. So consistently across this revenge tale, Cassie gives people choices, except for kind of the dean. The dean doesn't really have a choice. But, she gives Madison a choice to prove her that she's a better person than she used to be. She goes to the rapist lawyer's house, and presumably she is planning to murder him. She has a hitman or someone who's at least going to beat him up. But he asks for her forgiveness and she spares him. And Ryan also gets a chance to redeem himself. I liked this. This felt kind of like almost fairy tale-esque with all of the little contracts that she's building along her journey. Or it almost feels like Willy Wonka, like these people are being tested. So she goes to the bachelor party dressed as a stripper. She manages to get the groom upstairs alone. She restrains him, sort of, with pink fuzzy handcuffs, and she plans to write Nina's name all over him, which would have been great, but then he gets out of one of the cuffs and he kills her. And I was so mad. The scene goes on for so long. You have to watch her die in what seems like the amount of time it would actually take to strangle a person. I was honestly waiting for some twist. I was waiting for her to come back as a ghost. I was waiting for any way for the main character to be alive. And my first thought, I swear, my first thought when this happens was, if this movie ends at the rapist's wedding, I am going to just be livid. And it gets worse. It just keeps getting worse. So cops go to Ryan's workplace and they ask him about Cassie. And they tell him that she's gone missing. And he knows where she was. And he has another opportunity to redeem himself at least a little bit. And he doesn't. He lies to protect his friends. And I truly do not believe this is what this character would do. I understand the point. I understand the point that there are people, men, people, who seem good, who seem nice, who are pediatricians. Ryan is a pediatrician. Who seem like good people and are not good people. I understand that, but I feel like we have hit that home enough at this point in the movie. I truly believed that he loved her. Like I said, those romantic scenes were very effective, were extremely believable. It seemed genuine. They seemed in love. They broke up mere days ago. She has presumably been murdered. This is a very different situation than him being caught on tape as a bystander. He didn't do anything. He's not in trouble. The only thing at risk is these horrible friends. I just don't believe it. I don't believe that he wouldn't have told them. I don't believe that he wouldn't have had an emotional reaction to his girlfriend dying or being murdered by people he knew. And like I said, as soon as she died, I thought, we better not end this movie at the rapist's wedding. And we do end the movie at the rapist's wedding, but it's not as bad because, of course, Cassie had a plan. She always had a plan. She's very conniving. She's very good at planning. She sent the tape to the lawyer with a note telling him where she was going to be. She expected that she might get murdered. Side note, if she thought there was a chance that she was going to get murdered, I don't know why she didn't use real handcuffs instead of fuzzy pink sex handcuffs. I think she could have taken a few more precautions. She also sent a timed text message, a scheduled text message to Ryan to arrive on the day of the wedding. Yay, technology. And I will say, this was a pretty satisfying scene. Ruining the guy's wedding, cops showing up with music playing in the background. It's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. I get why the writer would want us to end up here. Overall, this was a really skillful movie. Like I said, the aesthetic, the visual aesthetic, the palette of colors, the soundtrack, the acting, the casting was all very good. The writing was very good. The dialogue was very good. It's just not really the movie that I wanted it to be. It made me think a lot about what I would want from a survivor story because these movies so often disappoint me. Personally, I think I would be happier, generally speaking, if the person getting revenge is the victim themselves. I would like to see some legal dramas that highlight the corruption of cops, lawyers, college administrators. But generally speaking, I'd also like to see a range of stories, and I think most of all, I would like to see a story about healing and moving on. Success can be a form of revenge, right? Thriving can be a form of revenge. I just don't love the message here of revenge at all cost, even her life. My perfect version of this story, I guess, would have been much the same, except that Ryan was not a bystander when this happened. Maybe Cassie still gets the tape and Ryan is confronted with the reality of this and he has to make a choice, and maybe he struggles with that choice and they have massive fights about it, and then Cassie would have to stop her lying spree and stop traumatizing herself over and over, and they could have a happy life together. And they could still get the guy convicted because they have a tape. But alas, that is not this movie. I still enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I still highly recommend it, and you know what? We'll always have the orchestral version of Toxic. Hi, I'm back with even more thoughts about Promising Young Woman. So everything you've seen in this video up to this point are my honest reactions to seeing the movie for the first time. But then days passed and I could not stop thinking about this movie. And first of all, I think that that is the mark of a really good film. And then I watched it a second time and I have to say I really liked it. So I started to second guess everything I said originally. It was just a really different experience to watch this movie without wondering what was going to happen or thinking about what I wanted to happen, and just letting it be the movie that it is. And a bunch of things struck me the second time around that I didn't mention in the first half of this video, so I'm going to talk about them now. First, I want to say that moment where Ryan first mentions Al, the rapist, casually, and it makes it clear that he's still friends with him, that was so well handled. I didn't talk about that originally, but music starts playing that really effectively conveys how Cassie feels. She doesn't confront him, she just goes along trying to pretend that she's not having a deeply emotional experience, and he doesn't notice. I thought it was really accurate and well done. Unfortunately, this is a part of life for a lot of people where someone just casually mentions someone that you know did something terrible, and I thought it was really well handled. There's also a moment I really liked where Cassie is confronting Ryan. I think the first time around I was so struck by how deeply upset I was that the movie was unfolding in that way that I didn't even notice this moment. He says to her something like, "Cassie, think about what you're doing," and she says, I cannot begin to tell you how much I've thought about it. And in general, of course, this movie just does a really good job of conveying the way that so often perpetrators of these crimes get to just go on and live their lives, and the victims and those affected by their actions are stuck and obsessed. And this movie did not feel preachy to me, even though it has a very clear message. Cassie's not just pontificating, she's doing stuff. I feel like the plot was so tightly wound that it didn't feel like it was driven too heavily by the message. On her revenge tour, Cassie talks to a victim blamer, a lawyer, and a dean. Each one of those confrontations could really be a movie and a concept unto itself. And yet, to me at least, it did not feel contrived. It did not feel like the writer was trying to cram in all these different angles, because the plot was engaging and one thing seemed to lead logically to the next. Now let's talk one final time, I promise, about the moment when Cassie finds out that Ryan was a bystander. Like I said before, this was the most devastating moment in the movie to me. This was the part I was most upset about, but it's also the part that I'm still thinking about days later. So maybe it would have been too much of a loss to lose that scene. I'm not sure I would be thinking about this movie days later if it had been the movie that I wanted it to be. I should also say that a big part of my disappointment was in how well made the rom-com type scenes were, and maybe that doesn't mean that this should have been a different movie. Maybe that just means that I do really hope that this writer/director writes a rom-com sometime in the future. Of course, lots of great movies don't give us what we want for the characters, right? That's basically what a tragedy is. It's a story wherein you don't get what you want. And to me, ultimately, this movie feels like a tragedy. I guess I was just really shocked because I did not expect it to be one from the trailer, from the beginning. So, ouch. And I would still call it a tragedy in spite of the fact that the ending is filmed and framed as uplifting. The choice of the music, how it's shot, and also just the scene that we end on. I mean, we don't end with Cassie's parents finding out that she's dead. In fact, we don't even have to see that. That would be a true tragedy. Of course, a scene like that is still in your mind even though you aren't given that scene. And that's what makes the ending feel so conflicting to me. But I think that's really cool. It's rare that a movie makes me feel this conflicted. I'm sorry that I don't have a clear, straightforward argument to make about Promising Young Woman, but I think this movie is worth thinking and rethinking. It's really, really complex, and that's what makes it so good. So go watch it if you haven't already.